my story was one of luck, and I'm sure most people will talk about luck on their journey, because I hadn't actually played a cricket match when I went on trial. It's like it was normal in my head, but perhaps sometimes when I talk about it, it's not normal. But I've never had a son. My dad gave up everything of his like his balanced life to support my sport. I guess like family is the biggest sacrifice. So throughout the summer, I disappear in April, I come back in September. Well, this is like a job spec for me. I couldn't believe that this was just on the BBC. So I got my agent to ring them. I wouldn't want to go through it all again, like the ups and downs, the daily warm-ups, the pressure, whatever. I'm so chuffed, but I'll be glad when it finishes.
Okay, so it's an absolute pleasure today to have Gloucestershire cricketer Tom Smith with us on our Elite Children, a Family Portrait podcast. So Tom, welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on the show today. I know you're really busy with your training, because I know the new campaign starts on the 6th of April against Glamorgan. So I know you're really kind of busy with all your training. So thank you for finding the time to come and have a chat with us. Before we start, so the listeners can get to know you a little bit better, my children have come up with 10 quick-fire would-you-rather questions. So today we have Mason, my eldest boy, who's going to ask you the questions. Out of a very, very sporty family, there's only Mason who's ever played cricket. Mason thoroughly enjoyed it, so we thought it was quite fitting that Mason would ask you the questions. So I'm going to pass you over to Mason now, and Mason's going to ask you the questions. Is that okay, dude? Yeah. Okay, there you go. Pass this over. There we go.
Would you rather game or read a book?
Well, first of all, thank you very much for having me on. I think read a book. I'm not a huge gamer. I guess that's something we might talk about to do with my childhood, because I didn't actually have a games console, so I've never fortunately played them, I guess, because it's given me a lot more time. So definitely read a book.
Oh, okay. Would you rather win $1 million or earn $1 million?
Geez, that's a good question. No, I'd definitely like to earn it, I think. Yeah, definitely hard work pays off.
Have a takeaway or eat out?
Takeaway. Eat at home with the family.
Yes. Listen to Stormzy or Drake?
Drake.
Oh,
good choice.
Yes. Wear Nike or Adidas?
I'm going to say Adidas. Slightly more cricket aligned than Nike. So I'll go for them.
Yes, good choice, good choice. Own a Bugatti or a Lamborghini?
Lamborghini.
Very good choice again. Do cardio or lift weights?
Definitely cardio. I'm not the greatest weightlifter, but I definitely love going out on a run or doing some bits in the gym.
Play Spider-Man or the Incredible Hulk in a Marvel movie?
Spider-Man would be pretty cool.
Play with Prime Sir Ian Bothman or Prime Sir Alistair Cook?
I've actually played against Alistair Cook, so I'd have to go for both of them, because I've only seen him on TV. I haven't had the pleasure of I haven't actually seen him in person, so that'd be quite nice.
Oh, right. Coach cricket or play cricket?
Definitely play. No, I think playing's a real privilege, and I'm clinging on to my playing days with dear life. I've only got a few more years left.
So, right, okay. Thank you very much for that, Mason.
Okay.
Thank you, Mason.
It's okay.
Right then. Okie dokie. Right then, so as you know, the podcast is to shine the light on the secrets and sacrifices all families go through to allow their children to become elite level athletes, something which is really close to our hearts with having 4 children currently on this journey. So I think my first question would be, where did it all begin for Tom? Can you take me back to your earliest childhood memories of when you was living at home in Eastbourne? Because I'm always quite kind of curious to kind of hear whether these experiences shaped any of the athletes' journeys of where they are today.
Yeah, so as you said, I lived in a sort of small seaside town just outside of Eastbourne called
Oh,
Seaford. Very
very
much
nice.
a working class background.
Yep.
Went to state school. I'm one of five, sort
Okay.
of blended family. So my eldest brothers were in the forces,
Okay.
so they were quite sporty, and they were my idols growing up. And then I have a sister who didn't really play sport, but then my sister, who's sort of closest to me, is 5 years older than me. She was very sporty,
Okay.
into gymnastics, dancing, and I guess she then provided me with someone to play with. She's 5 years older.
Okay.
I probably got into cricket and football at age 5, I think.
Right. Okay.
So I started mucking around. I mean, I was quite fortunate that where we grew up, we had a big green space outside the front house. We had a sort of
Okay.
modest home, a small garden, but we had this huge green space that we were able to be out on all the
Yep.
time. And I mean, that was my childhood memory of just being outside, playing any sport, being on my bike, roller boots, skateboard,
Yeah. Yeah.
just out there all the time. And we were lucky there were some other young families that lived on the close as well that would come out onto the green space and we'd all play together.
Yeah. Okay.
So I was just surrounded by it from such a young age.
Okay. So what actually made you fall in love with cricket? Had you tried, like you'd mentioned, you played football. Had you tried other kind of sports as well, and you kind of tried those, and you kind of had a passion and a kind of an allegiance with kind of cricket? Where did that love come from?
I think I basically played all sports at the same time because
Right.
that's where
Okay.
cricket's quite different, that you don't have to specialise. So in the summer, I'd play my cricket. In the
Okay.
winter, I'd play my football and
Yeah.
golf and tennis and whatever else. But certainly from sort of 5, 6 years old, I mean, I'd do weekly camps
Yeah.
and I would be playing a lot outside. But I never, at that point, like every kid probably of that generation, was probably more interested in football and more excited by football.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but I guess I started like from age 9, I got into the Sussex stuff for cricket. And then I
Okay.
probably realised that I'd be a better cricketer than I would be a footballer or a golfer.
Right. Okay. And you mentioned the start of your cricket journey. How did that come about? Was that through playing through school that you got selected, and do they have it whereby you get kind of selected, and over the period of say like the season, and does it kind of come to an end at a certain point if you're not kind of developed? So my boys play football, for instance. So they're at academies, and at the end of every season, they'll kind of either get asked to go to the next kind of age group, or unfortunately, they'll get kind of rejected. Is it a similar process with kind of cricket?
I think it probably is now. I mean,
Right. Okay.
talking whatever 25 years ago, it wasn't as professional then. And I think
Okay.
my story was one of luck, and I'm sure most people will talk about luck on their journey
Yeah.
because I hadn't actually played a cricket match when I went on trial.
Okay.
So, and as like I said, I went to a state school. We played
Yep.
quick cricket with a softball, and our PE teacher thought, well, he's all right, he plays a bit, and we'll send him to the county trials.
Okay.
And so I went down to trial for the under 10s, but I mean, I hadn't played a match or anything. And I mean, I was in a big sports hall with multiple cricket lanes. There must have been 50, 60 kids and a couple of coaches with a clipboard. And,
Yep.
my dad always used to say, just bowled one good ball at the right
Yep.
time when the
Yep.
coach was there with his clipboard.
Yep.
And that was me. I got in. I bowled terribly for the rest of the trial. I
Bless
hit
you.
one good shot when the coach was there.
Yeah.
And so we went off and I made the under 10s and we
Wow.
went off and I'd never played a game. So I didn't know
Right.
about the running forwards. You run
Yep.
sideways in quick cricket.
Yeah.
And I got run out without facing a ball in this game because I didn't know about the running.
Yeah.
I think I bowled one over that wasn't particularly great. And that was my journey. That's my start.
Right. Okay.
And then you played, I don't know, 5 or 6 games, of which would be a squad of 15. I might have played 2 or 3 in that first year. And I just kept scraping through. Like every year,
Yeah.
you just do enough. You go to the next trial the following year, you just do enough. And
Yeah.
so those first 3 years probably were just clinging on for dear life, trying to stay in there.
Right.
Whilst
Okay.
my club cricket started picking up, playing for
Yep.
Eastbourne, playing as much as I can. I probably developed a lot in those few years, but still
Okay.
not producing anything on the field of any note.
Yeah. So when you was growing up, we've had other athletes that have been on. We've had footballers, we've had basketballers, and they've mentioned about kind of different, sacrifices along their kind of journey to becoming like a professional footballer, professional basketballer. Um, with your kind of cricket career throughout your kind of childhood up until probably say 16, 17, 18, would you say you had a normal childhood? For instance, we had Reece Brown, who used to play for Manchester United in England, and he was saying that he'd miss, say, like family holidays because he was always worried that a trialist may come in and take his place. When he came home in an evening, once he'd finished kind of training, he'd have something to eat. He'd have a bit of downtime. He'd have something to eat, but then his friends would be wanting him to go out, but he couldn't go out because he knew he had to eat, and then he'd need to go to bed early because he'd be up early again and like kind of train. So he always said that he didn't really feel as if he had like a normal kind of childhood for his career. Would you say that you would have had a more normal childhood when you was growing up before your...
I think it's funny because when you say normal, like I don't really have much to compare it to. It's like it was normal in my head, but perhaps
Yeah, yeah.
sometimes when I talk about it, it's not normal. But I've never had a summer holiday ever because
Right,
obviously the
okay, yeah,
cricket season's in the
yeah,
summer.
yeah,
And
okay.
actually, it wasn't until my eldest daughter, um, in the summer when my wife was pregnant, and then we went to Spain for this weekend during the cricket season, got permission to go away. But that would have been the first time I'd ever
Yeah,
been away.
yeah,
As a family, we didn't go away unless it was on cricket tours, which Dad
yeah,
would take us. So yeah, I guess that's not normal to what most people's summers look like. But
yeah,
all
yeah,
of this just looked like was just normal for me. Like I was sport obsessed. I wanted to be out on that green in front of the house,
yeah,
morning,
yeah,
noon, and night.
yeah.
And it was funny the question about gaming because I've never had a games console ever. Like I didn't. It wasn't a thing that ever came into the house because I was just
Yeah,
playing sport. It was
right,
never my parents saying no, you can't have these things. But it was just
yeah,
there wasn't the time. Like it was just I'm going to play sport, and it wasn't even like a drive to be a pro. It was just
yep,
well, I still am just
yeah,
obsessed with it.
right, okay. Okay, so when you was growing up then, would you say on the journey that did your parents support you through your cricket journey? Because again, we've had guests on, and because of say like the professional sports, and there's an element of say like risk and uncertainty attached to it. Were your parents fully behind you being a professional cricketer?
Yeah, like Dad was just the vehicle. Like Dad supported everything that I wanted to do. Like he drove
Right.
me everywhere. He didn't miss a game. Like
Yeah.
he'd work. He was a plumber. Like he worked hard in the winter to take
Yeah.
his summer holidays were watching me
Yeah.
play sport.
Oh.
So he took me everywhere and just facilitated my dreams and
Yeah.
my ambition. I would never say I've got to be this, I've got to be that.
Yeah.
But he got me there and he was very balanced. He didn't put me under pressure. He always
Right.
just said,
Okay.
try your best.
Yeah.
He never really overly dissected a game because he didn't play a high level, so he didn't
Yeah.
necessarily know. He just stuck to he knows data, like he would know, well,
Yeah.
your economy was good, or
Yeah.
you'd scored 100 runs, whatever it was. Um, so he was great, and he didn't put a lot of pressure on me.
Right. Okay.
Um, and then Mum, bless her, didn't really know much about cricket, so I wasn't sort of surrounded by it by them, but
Yeah.
they were great facilitators of getting me to places of
Yeah.
wherever I needed to be. They were there to support me to do it.
Okay. So I'd read that you're doing your level 4 cricket coaching qualification now. Um, with with that, have you kind of come across now that you kind of see parents are a little bit more pushy with the way that kind of professional sports kind of gone now, or the way, say, like kind of cricket's gone? Would you say you kind of seen it through a different kind of lens, where you can see it from kind of the coach's perspective, whereby you can see how much the parents are kind of pushing the children? Or do you kind of see that the parents almost want it more than the children, or is it not like that in cricket?
No, it's definitely like that. I mean, even when
Yeah,
I was growing up, my friends' parents were definitely driving them and giving them a harder time than my parents. That's something I always saw, that I was quite privileged the way
yeah,
my parents were.
okay,
Um, and you still see it now in the professional game with
yeah,
grown-ups having their parents still on their backs about
yeah, yeah,
performances and whatever. So it's something that is a real tricky balance. I think with pushy parenting,
yep,
your child still needs to have the passion to do the
yep,
chosen task. I think that's
yep,
what I've learned in coaching, because if the child's just going to take shortcuts, if he's
yep,
not going to put in when they're not pushing them, because you
yep,
spend a lot of time without your grown-ups, so you spend a lot of
yep,
time on your own
yeah,
in
yeah,
cricket, in that lane, working hard at your game. And if you haven't got that inner desire,
yeah,
a parent, I don't think, can give you that unless they're
yeah,
standing there in the net,
yeah, yeah,
um, which they're not going to be able to do in a professional cricket environment. So
yeah.
I think that's my biggest learning. And obviously, I'm a dad of three girls as well. And unless they've got the passion
Yeah,
to do a chosen task, I can't facilitate that until they want to do it.
yeah, yeah. So when you was growing up, then did anyone tell you how difficult it was to be a professional kind of cricketer? So, for instance, my boys, they want to be professional footballers, which is probably quite a common thing if you ask quite a lot of boys in kind of primary schools where they are. But you read the, say, statistics on it, and I think one of the statistics is that I think it's like 1% of 9-year-olds in a current academy will make it to become a professional footballer. So it's quite a kind of a tough kind of process. Did anyone kind of mention that to you with regards to your cricket when you was kind of growing up, that it's quite a tough kind of process, and it's probably a roller coaster of a journey that you'd probably go on throughout your career?
I think because there was so much more media now than there
Yep.
ever was. So, like, I watched that amazing Crystal Palace documentary on Channel 4 about their academy,
Yeah, yeah,
and that put it on the screen and it brought it to real life.
yeah,
Whereas I think for me, when I was growing up, like, I just played sport. I
yeah,
didn't think about that. I didn't worry
yeah,
about that. I didn't have peers that were on the same level in different sports or in my sport. So it never really, because I didn't think I was going to get there till later on. I had quite a late kick in cricket. I
yeah.
probably didn't flourish till I was 16.
Okay.
But no one ever sat me down and thought this is going to be a tough journey or you might not
Yeah,
make it. I just played. And I think that sort of ignorance was bliss, because I
right.
wasn't
Yeah, yeah,
overthinking it. And if it didn't happen, it didn't happen. I wasn't putting too much pressure on.
yeah.
You probably don't do that till the very end, till you get
Okay.
to when you can see it's achievable.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Okay. So I mean, like I mentioned that because we've had two guests on recently where one, his grandparents didn't want him to play professional sport. They wanted him to get a good education. They didn't think his professional sport could provide for him and his family, and it was a secure kind of job to kind of go into. And then we've had another previous guest on whose mum and dad were completely split with it. His dad didn't want him to play football at all for the same reasons. He didn't think it was a steady job and it was going to kind of earn him a good wage. However, his mum was fully behind him and supported him to a point where she was almost lying to his dad that he was supposedly doing his homework in the library at school. However, he was football training. So we're just kind of curious to kind of hear if both kind of parents were kind of fully supported of the journey. And it's I think it's quite nice when you have got the full support of both kind of mum and dad and kind of the family to kind of support you on that journey, because the process must just be a more pleasurable experience for you as well then. So that's really nice. That's lovely. So talking about kind of sacrifices, would you say your parents sacrificed to kind of support you on the journey, whether it be kind of financial kind of sacrifices, or would you think it was more kind of time spent together as a family kind of sacrificing? I mean, for us, our eldest daughter, she plays tennis, and she'll be away for like a week at a time. And she'll be away, so we won't see our eldest daughter at the weekends. My boys are playing football, so we might not see each other for like the Saturday or kind of the Sunday. So we feel as if we sacrifice a lot of family time kind of together because of their activities. Was there anything like that you was kind of conscious of or aware of when you was growing up?
I wouldn't have been aware of it at the time, but obviously you reflect back on it. And like my dad gave up everything of his like his balanced life to support my sport. Like he worked hard. He worked 6 days a week. He'd be like starting at 6, getting home at 6, like on days where I didn't have sport, to allow himself the opportunity to be at my sport, but also like to financially back me on the journey. Because as we know, like specialist coaching or equipment all needs to be funded. It's not a cheap sport. And so he like grafted so hard for my dream. Not that I ever noticed, but when you talk about sacrifice as a family, like me and dad went everywhere. Like we were in his van going to games, football, cricket, whatever. It's just me and him. I never really considered much about, we didn't spend a huge amount of time together as a 4 or a 5. Obviously my brothers and sisters are a lot older than I am. So they left home, when I was fairly small. But yeah, mum would have spent a hell of a lot of time at home on her own or with my sister Amy, like never as a family. Like the whole of the summer I'd be out. But yeah, I hadn't considered that too much. If I think about that now as the family that I have here, that'd be awful. Couldn't think of anything worse, not being able to see them. But he was incredible for that journey.
Right. Okay. So what would you say then your biggest sacrifice for your cricket kind of journey to date has been then? As I say, like past guests, they've probably said their childhood. They've sacrificed the late nights, the parties, the going on the family holidays for that. What would you say your biggest sacrifice would be to become a professional cricketer?
I wouldn't say I had to sacrifice anything. I wouldn't change my childhood at all.
Right, okay.
Because I was so sport obsessed, like I wasn't bothered about missing of birthday parties and holidays, like because I just wanted to play sport all the time. I guess like family is the biggest sacrifice. Like throughout the summer, I disappear in April, I come back in September. Like we're constantly going away. 4-day cricket, 1-day cricket. I've played for 4 clubs, so I've had to live in 4 different places. So like they're the things I look back on and think, I missed key events. I might have missed the sports day. I might have missed the child's birthday. Those sorts of things in the summer are really hard. But I think in cricket is different, that you get 6 months at home. So for 6 months, I don't miss a school drop off. I don't miss a school pickup. I go to all their clubs. So that's the biggest sacrifice. I think the family time in the summer, which a lot of people sort of have to support me and support the childcare and support the girls, which is tricky.
Okay. So from starting your career at Sussex, like you'd mentioned before, and then playing for Surrey, Middlesex, and then you was loaned to Gloucestershire, and then you signed on a permanent basis, which I think I read the other day that you've signed another year extension till 24, which must be amazing news for you, which is great. Has there been any times where you felt like kind of giving up the journey of kind of cricket due to kind of like any, say, like rejections or say not being selected in like kind of various teams? and again, I'll refer back to we had one guest on, Mane Honorise. So he used to play for West Ham United, and now he's at Dagenham and Redbridge. And he spoke quite openly about his depression due to getting released by like kind of so many different clubs, and he was almost in a bit of a bubble where he thought he was going to kind of make it, so to speak, when he was at West Ham. So he spoke about kind of the rejection having an impact on his, like, say, mental health. Has there been any times where you felt like kind of, Joe, giving up the cricket journey because of, like I said, like because of being released from a club or not being selected?
I think you're always aware, like when your deals are running out, that you're vulnerable.
Yeah.
You're in a tricky
Right.
position. Is your club going to keep you? Is there going to be opportunity elsewhere?
Yeah.
And with there only being 18 professional teams, and only 500 sportsmen and cricketers in the country,
Yeah.
it's a small amount of people and spots.
Yeah.
And certainly being a spin bowler, you probably only have 2 of those on each team. So there's not many jobs around the country. So certainly when I got to Sussex, when it was coming towards the end, there was a lot of us who all did the same thing, who sort of batted a bit, bowled a bit of spin.
Okay.
But luckily I was young. I was only, I think I was 21 when I moved. So I sort of thought that someone would take a punt on me. I was at a big, successful club at the time.
Yep.
And luckily I had 2 or 3 offers. So that one I always knew, I need to move. It's good for everyone. Go to Middlesex. But sort of as Middlesex, I had 4 years at Middlesex. And towards the end of that last year, I'd sort of not in a great place in my cricket. I'd lost a lot of confidence in my 4-day cricket. Middlesex had just drawn a line really through my 4-day cricket, and I was playing in the 1-day side. And then I sort of thought that probably that was going to be the end. I didn't think there'd be opportunity elsewhere. And Middlesex had said, look, we're going to release you, but we want you to stay at the club. We like you having you around. There'll be some sort of whatever role, coaching role. So I said, well, I'll just check in the loan market, see if there's anywhere. I read an article on the BBC. That was like, Gloucestershire had luckily put an article saying their spinner had been done for throwing and the other spinner had broken his hand, and they had a young 17-year-old playing. They didn't want him to play T20. And I thought, this is like a job spec for me. I couldn't believe that this was just on the BBC. So I got my agent to ring them. I just said, look, just give them a call. My career's done at Middlesex. I'll come and play the T20s. It'd be a nice way to finish. And then they said, well, whilst you're here, there's 2 4-dayers. Why don't you play them? And I thought, okay, I'll play them, but I've got no, I felt horrendous about my game. But I was like, well, if it gets the deal through, I'll go down there. And so glad I did, because I quite easily have not looked for that deal and could have retired. Would have retired happily. I would have had 8 years in the game, and it would have been, I would have been proud of what I achieved. But certainly coming to Gloucestershire in a new environment and starting in a real low place and thinking, well, do I want to do this? And then actually finishing that loan deal, really chuffed with where my game was at, felt a bit more confident in red ball cricket, and the rest is history. I had 10 more years here.
Yeah. So there's obviously there like an intrinsic kind of motivation and kind of desire and resilience to kind of succeed there, isn't there? That's kind of inside you, motivating you to want to succeed in that. So that's really nice. That. So my next question is, you've taken around 200 career wickets, scored more than 1,500 runs across all formats. You've been named in the England performance squad in 2012. You won the 2015 Royal London One Day at Lords. To play at Lords must have been an amazing kind of achievement, and one that yourself and kind of your family were probably so proud of. And then you won the PCA Future Awards in 2022. Would you say climbing the mountain is worth the view? And I think you've already kind of answered that from questions that we've kind of spoke about beforehand.
Yeah, I mean, I'm so fortunate to have played for the time I have played. Like at various points along the way, I could have been released, and people showed faith in me, and they always saw something that sometimes you don't necessarily see yourself. And I now look back on it with immense pride. I mean, it's funny. Someone said we were doing a warm up yesterday. I said to one of the first year pros, it's like, I wouldn't do it again. Like, I'm so happy that it's going to come to an end in the next few years. And I'm very proud, and I'm looking forward to what's after cricket. But I wouldn't want to go through it all again. Like the ups and downs, the daily warm ups, the pressure, whatever. I'm so chuffed, but I'll be glad when it finishes. And I'm very proud to, like, you know, the 2020 stuff. I've had a lot of success domestically, and it's been a great journey. And I never once thought at the start of it, you know, that I would achieve this. I just thought it'd be great to survive in the game for a few years. And it's just grown and grown and grown, which is, which has been great to be a part of.
Okay. So, so at the end of every show, we have a tradition. So we ask all our guests if they have a favourite quote or philosophy that they stand for on, like, say, a daily basis. So, for instance, our last guest, Danny Evans, who's a professional basketballer, his was "Be where your feet are." Basically, he meant the only thing that matters is where you are now. So I was wondering if you had anything kind of similar that you'd like to kind of share.
Yeah, and I've just sort of been doing a little bit of thinking about it, and I've recently been watching a lot of or listening to a lot of the high performance podcast, and there was a quote on there. Damien said the other day, and it sort of really resonated with me, and that was the two types of people in life: the people that tell you the truth, and then the people that tell you the time. And it's sort of linked a lot into my coaching, you know, how I want to be as a coach, and how I want to just be authentic and tell people the truth. Because in our industry, there is a lot of people that can tell you what you want to hear at times, which obviously doesn't always drive performance. Sometimes you do need that hard truth. So that's something that I wouldn't say I live by, but I've recently heard, and it really resonated with me.
Oh, amazing! I like that one. I'll make sure that I use that in my future podcast. I'm sure we'll be sharing that one a lot. Thank you for that one, Tom. Thank you very, very much for being a guest on Elite Children: A Family Portrait. I'm sure the listeners can definitely see they're not alone on the journey to raising elite level children. Good luck when your season starts against Glamorgan, as we've already mentioned, and good luck with any future ventures. Or any of the projects that you're involved in. For instance, one that I was really interested in was, at the moment, you're developing some spin tracking technology for bowling in cricket. So could you just kind of explain that in a bit more detail, and where you're up to in the process for that? Because, as I say, it sounds really kind of interesting to me, that one.
Yeah, what I'm trying to find is a product that could track spin rate. So obviously in cricket at the moment, for spin bowling specifically in my coaching, it's all very well saying this looks good or this feels good, but there's no actual hard evidence to say what is good and what isn't good. And I think what we know in cricket is high spin rates equal high success, really. Like if you can couple it together with accuracy and consistency. But the best spinners in the world on the world stage have very high spin rates. And what there currently isn't is an affordable device that you could set up easily that just gives you that instantaneous feedback. And there's been people that have tried with smart balls, which are quite expensive. There's like tracking stuff that, again, is expensive. And the thing that frustrates me is for Talent ID, we could get so much more information from lots of different backgrounds, from lots of different parts of Bristol specifically, that we could actually then identify talent earlier to then bring them into pathways. At the moment, we're reliant upon a coach saying he looks okay, comes into our environment, we think he's okay, but we don't actually know. And what we do know, we can go with observation and what we know from playing for a number of years and coaching for a number of years. But that's the thing that I feel needs to change, where we can get the game and the data out to a broader audience to stop missing, you know, highly talented spin bowlers that are just in the wrong environment, in the wrong part of Bristol, at the wrong school. And actually, for me, my dream would be, right, we've got a spin open day at the ground, every spinner in Bristol come down, we can blanket test 500 people easily on spin rate, accuracy, whatever. and then actually then have a sort of broader conversation on what does elite spin bowling look like.
Yeah.
At the moment, we haven't really found a product that's affordable at that level that we could bring it in without it being a huge investment. So anyone listening who has an affordable spin tracking advice, love to hear from them.
Oh, brilliant. Well, thank you very much for that. And thank you for all your stories that you've shared with us. Listening to kind of the stories, kind of words like kind of dedication and motivation and resilience definitely spring to mind. So I'm sure with a mindset like that, the start of the season will be a great one for you when you start your new campaign. And any ventures that you do get into will be a huge success. So Tom Smith, thank you very much. And thank you for spending some time with us on Elite Children, a Family Portrait. Thank you.
Thank you.